President Bola Tinubu has attributed the troubling surge in illegal mining, illicit funds flow and terrorism funding in Africa to the global community. Tinubu, who spoke on Monday while declaring open a two-day African high-level meeting on counter-terrorism right here in Abuja, emphasized that it is the funds from other countries that have been fueling illegal mining in Africa, which has in turn funded terrorism, or has been funding terrorism. Well, according to him, illegal mining has robbed countries on the continent of their natural resources.
While we seek to address the root cause of terrorism, we must also attack the root that feeds this evil branch. Evolving from the tactics of yesterday, terrorism is becoming a greater threat as it perfects ways to continuously finance itself, re-equip, resupply itself for its sinister mission. Not only does it kidnap people, it kidnaps precious resources, billions of dollars that legitimate government should be using to sculpt better society by providing education, healthcare, and food for its people, now go to pay for weapons and mayhem. Look at illegal mining that plagues so many of our nations today. Those who think illegal mining has no connection with the financing of terrorism are surely mistaken. The international community has both the moral and legal obligation to help in this cause because it is outside money, not African money, that fuels the illegal operations. We shall be knocking on this door of the international community to answer the call for justice, peace, and fair play.
Well, let's bring in General Anthony Atolagbe. He's a former force commander of the African military intervention in Darfur and a former director of peacekeeping operations in the Nigerian army. Good to see you, and thanks for your time. Listening to the president, he specifically, one of the key notes there is funding of terrorism not being sourced locally, but from the outside. But again, let's start by talking about how this is fueled across the continent, Nigeria inclusive. Have we been able to place our finger on sources of funding for terrorism?
Good evening to the audience, and welcome to the program. For me, we might need to take it from perhaps maybe from the global level. Then we come down to the African Union, and then perhaps to the regional economic communities. The UN Office for Counter-Terrorism, which was established sometimes in the late 2015 or 17, they listed out the jobs that they need to do. And one of the jobs that actually was captured in their arrangement is that they needed to find out who are the people responsible for funding of these activities. And to the best of my knowledge, the office to track funding was actually established, and then from there they started getting people arrested and things like that. But then at the AU level, I know it took a little time, perhaps because not all the countries in Africa actually ratified that resolution as at that time. So it took a little time before the African Union was able to set up. In fact, what they did first was to establish a study and research center in Algiers. And that particular one was to educate people and perhaps open people's mind about what actually terrorism is all about, and how how countries, conducting training for countries on how to combat terrorism. Now, coming down to ECOWAS, of course, whatever ECOWAS also will be doing will be dovetailing from what was being done at the higher level. So they also, at that point, those of us who were still in the force then and we've having served with the UN and AU missions, we were very prepared and asking ourselves, when is ECOWAS actually going to key into this arrangement? But then, thank God, they had a framework in 1999, which made them to have somebody who was a kind of an eye for, just like what AU did. They appointed a chairperson to monitor and to perhaps coordinate and pursue legislation within countries and see how things. But as I speak, with what ECOWAS has done, and perhaps I also know about SADC, okay, right, they are almost at par with the level of implementation strategies that they've embarked. One of them is the establishment of a national counter-terrorism centers in their various countries. As I speak, SADC, perhaps I think they have close to 7 of the countries that have already established such. In Nigeria,
Great.
we
so
have.
If I may come in, and now we have President Tinubu calling for a regional standby force and counter-terrorism center that should be a hub for intelligence sharing and all of that. But what complexion should this counter-terrorism hub have? What should we be expecting from it? How much of a game changer, would it be in ensuring security, not just within the region, but in the countries?
Yeah. Okay. At the African Union level, what they have done is they have told countries, that is the regional economic communities now, they've told them they should subscribe forces to the African Union standby force, but specifically to counter-terrorism. Yeah. And to the best of my knowledge, these are supposed to be specially trained set of guys who will be infused, though with specific tasks and perhaps strike capabilities to move into areas where maybe other countries will need support to counter terror within their domains. So the same thing is being, so that instruction that is coming from AU is also being implemented in ECOWAS currently. And the intention is to have our own standby force, a counter-terror team. And well, there is a department or an office in ECOWAS that actually handles this particular, these counter-terror activities right now. It's headed by one of the countries have subscribed one of their specialists into that office. And how well, perhaps broadly established it is, I will not be able to tell, but I also know that if we look at the enormity of the security challenges here in West Africa, the CPAPS, that is the Commissioner for Political Security and in ECOWAS, he was saying a few days ago that we've recorded, that is in the last 1 or 2 months, that there have been 3,500 terrorism acts, and that we cannot just sit down and be thinking that we can be doing things the way we are doing it before. So I think when you look at those kind of figures, and then coming to Nigeria and seeing how we are also challenged by the activities of these people, if you put this kind of arrangement under an office in ECOWAS, perhaps to me, I am thinking that having a center will be a laudable approach to doing it. And the I know perhaps maybe we might be having challenges because funding, budget financing is also one major problem.
Let me quickly see if we can wrap up with this. You know, you've actually been in charge of peacekeeping, and sometimes it will seem as if when we have strife, conflicts, and when the civil population beginning to come back to peace times, some of the bad guys hijack that moment. So what more do you think we should be doing on the continent, Nigeria inclusive, especially across the continent, concerning, do you think we need peacekeeping forces to ensure that some of these countries that have had some interregnum can truly have their civil population come back and not put an opportunity for these terrorists to hijack?
Okay. There are stages in peace support operations. So we first, you have the stage of preventing conflict, that's prevention. Then if the prevention now fails and there's a breakdown, then you go to peacekeeping operations and then peace enforcement. And after all that, during peace enforcement or peace keeping operation, you have what we call peace building. That is another process that comes up that has to do with development, a kind of transitional architecture that takes care of how people are able to address injustices during the period of conflict and so on. So, but when we talk about the way it affects us in West Africa, for example, if you recall, one of the accusations that Burkina Faso made was that the ECOWAS has not been of any assistance to them all this while. So you now see a situation where they have been making a lot of efforts, and it's not as if the force is not on the ground, but look at a country like Nigeria that is supposed to be the lead, to play the lead role. We are even more challenged, perhaps more than most of these countries. So we have had many units outside participating in peacekeeping operations, but as I speak, we have thinned down in greater number to see that.
So it boils down to funding. I'm afraid that's where we'll leave it tonight. I would like to thank you for your time, General Anthony Atolagbe, former Force Commander of the African Military Intervention in Darfur.